two men were standing at a bus stop, and they were watching some, let's say, not so nice traffic go by them. It seemed like car versus car that day. One said to the other, "The biggest problem in our country today is ignorance and apathy." The other person said, "I don't know what that means, and I don't care." The book of Obadiah is the most minor of the minor prophets. Smallest, shortest. But sometimes a mighty impact comes from small things. Obadiah's name means servant of Yahweh, servant of God. We don't know exactly when he lived or wrote the book, which is true for many of our prophets, but you can get the clues by what he is addressing. It clearly refers to a time when Judah and Jerusalem were invaded and plundered. Historical events. Most scholars believe then that this happened around 586 BC when Nebuchadnezzar, say that 10 times fast, and the Babylonian army ransacked Jerusalem and deported most of her inhabitants into exile. So that's what happened. But what the book is addressing is what the neighbors did while this happened. The Edomites. The Edomites. You don't really, these are words you like, who are the Edomites? Descendants of Esau. You might recall Esau and his brother Jacob, right? The relationship between Judah and the Edomites goes all the way back to that initial sibling rivalry. The descendants of these two men eventually grew into separate nations, unfortunately. The descendants of Esau became known as the Edomites, and Jacob's, of course, the Israelites. The land of Canaan couldn't sustain them both. So Esau moved to the hill country, which was above. The animosity grew between these groups. You can follow it throughout the Old Testament. After Israel was freed from slavery in Egypt, Moses asked permission to pass through Edom on their way to the Promised Land. He was declined. Years later, David conquered the Edomites, and through the reign of Solomon, they were subject to Israel. You can see a grudge, right? An active, living grudge that just kept growing between these two. So when the Babylonian army came in and ransacked Jerusalem, the Edomites gloated. They were happy to see their neighbors, their actual brothers, go down. The overall purpose of this book, then, was to proclaim how wrong their attitude and their actions both were. In Eli Wiesel's autobiographical novel, The Town Beyond the Wall, he tells the story of a young man named Michael, a young Jewish person who survived the Holocaust. Michael traveled at great personal risk behind the Iron Curtain to his Hungarian hometown. Though his memory burned with images of the soldiers and police who brutalized him and his loved ones, Michael returned, not for revenge, but just to satisfy his curiosity. He says, "This was the thing I had wanted to understand ever since the war, nothing else. How a human can become and remain indifferent." In a strange way, he understood the brutality of the executioners and the prison guards in the Holocaust. What he did not understand was Wiesel recalled a spectator who lived across the street from the synagogue who just looked out his window day after day at these atrocities. His face was gazing out, reflecting no piety, no pity, no pleasure, no shock, no anger, not even interest. Just impassive, cold, impersonal observance. There is a bond, Michael thought, between the executioner and the victim, even though it's a horrible bond, it is a connection. Many of the executioners did not want to do their jobs, but they were following orders. The victims, of course, did not want to be there either. But the spectator is just watching without being seen, unnoticed. Wsumc concludes, to be indifferent, for whatever reason, is to deny not only the validity of existence, but also the beauty of the other. Betray, and you are a person. Torture your neighbor, you are a person. But being indifferent is inhumane. So the Edomites were like that and worse. They watched as the Babylonians conquered, plundered, took away all of Jerusalem. People of Israel were wiped out, and their brother Esau just watched. And not only that, when the Babylonians were almost done, the Edomites came in for their part too. They came in and stole the leftovers. And those Israelites who were hiding, guess what the Edomites did? They sold them to the Babylonians. They revealed where they were. Obadiah describes it. On the day you stood aloof, on the day the strangers captured his wealth, while foreigners entered his gate and cast lots for Jerusalem, you were just like one of them. You may as well have been a Babylonian. As I share a lot about musicians, they seem to sometimes be prophets. The great rock band, the Eagles, sing the following lyrics. I make my living off the evening news. Just give me something I can use. People love it when you lose. They love dirty laundry. Kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down. Kick them when they're up, kick them all around. You don't really want to find out what's going on. You don't really want to know just how far it's gone. Just leave well enough alone. Eat your dirty laundry. You're welcome. You're going to have that song playing in your head now. Obadiah's vision is this kind of a statement of, I cannot believe other humans treating humans this way. Erasmus of Rotterdam, someone you only hear about when you go to school to be a pastor, was the scholar who probably did more to inspire the Protestant Reformation than any other person. Through his writings, Martin Luther was inspired to take a stand. Erasmus prepared the way for people like Luther, Calvin, Knox, and our own John Wesley. But when the issues came to a head and people had to take action, Erasmus suddenly was quiet. Luther, later on, wrote to Erasmus and said, if you will not come and lead with us, then come and spectate, and I'll make sure you get a good back seat. Sarcasm at its best there. For those people who take action, there is no place in the back seats. This is speaking to us now, isn't it, in our country? As United Methodists, we are a church that takes action. Who will stand up for the immigrants? Who will stand up for those who are being betrayed? Who will lose health insurance? Who will lose their standing in our society, their place? Who will stand up for what the Statue of Liberty stands for? Martin Luther led the charge to change the course of Christianity. The reformer stood at the door of Wittenberg, nailing his 95 theses, exposing the heresy and the hypocrisy of the church, requiring people to pay for their sins to be forgiven. Speaking to the leaders of the church. In 1521, he said, "Here I stand, I can do no other. God help me. Amen." right? He's giving up his place as a priest. He's going all out. He's calling for reform in the church. Centuries later, 1955, a seamstress, a Christian, a member of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, decides to get off the sidelines and get into the game. A bus driver told her to vacate her seat and to move to the back of the bus. This Christian woman was an African American, and a white person wanted her seat. And one of the most courageous choices of the 20th century, she did not move, and she started a revolution. The next Monday night, 10,000 people gathered. 10,000 people gathered from this one person's action. What do we do next? They asked God. A revolution began from one person's actions. The Edomites stood and watched while their neighbors were plundered. Disintegration of the society God has placed upon us to love and to serve, disintegrating in front of us. Sibling rivalry is a reality of life. I often brag that my sister knocked my tooth out. She was older than me. But anyway, there's jealousy. Why did he get that? Why did she get this? It was tough. Our birthdays were one day apart. We shared birthdays every year. 3 years and a day apart. I mean, it's just making sure you understood that. But for those who have siblings, you understand. Hopefully it's not that bad. Like the first grader who came home and said, "Dad, I'm a brownie. And the little brother ran up and said, "Dad, I'm a cupcake." He wanted to be celebrated also. But Jacob and Esau take this to a whole other playing field, don't they? It cuts deep, and it can last a lifetime. Family grudges can sometimes be the worst. In fact, some people will come to church looking for a new family because their bloodline family has been too painful. That's a regular story. It's an ongoing story. And the church wants to be a sanctuary, wants to be a safe place. And that's okay. Sometimes we need to restart with new people. And then sometimes we get the courage to go back into our families, stronger, with more courage, ready to stand up for ourselves, ready to love, ready to forgive, and at least do our part in that equation. We can't force other people and their reaction, but we can at least learn to stand up for ourselves. And the church is a place to practice that, to love and to forgive each other. Unfortunately for Jacob and Esau, they didn't get to that place. In fact, they're celebrating each other's failures. In this passage, and in many Bible passages, something that gets glossed over, I do want to highlight this morning, is human trafficking. In this little book of Obadiah, it says the Edomites, basically, when they found the Israelites, the few who were hiding, the few who thought they were safe, they turned them over to the Babylonians. Human trafficking is not a new idea. It's been going on for centuries. And I just want to give you some current information here. And this comes from our United Methodist Justice.org page. 40.3 million people today are in modern-day slavery. 24.9 million in forced labor. 15 million in forced marriage. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by forced labor, accounting for 99% of victims in the commercial sex industry. Those are horrible numbers. Millions of people. United Methodist Church says, what do? We take action. Advocate for the passage and implementation of laws at local and national levels of government to prevent abuse, to train people to look for it, to watch for it, everyday people like you and me, to organize forums, invite outside speakers. The Bible is clear. It condemns human trafficking. They were doing this to each other in their own family. One day there was a campus ministry event in the chapel. Many guests came. It's a well-known chapel on a college campus. And this was back in the 1950s. People were well-dressed. The auditorium was packed. The minister, the guest speaker, was up front, giving an amazing message. A young man walks in, true story. There's no seats in the back. Walks down the center aisle. Every pew is filled. Can you imagine that? Just picture it. He sat down at the floor, right in front of the speaker. People were shaking their heads. Can't believe this. The gall of this young man. What is he doing? He's not well dressed. He looks disheveled. He's sitting right in front of the speaker. We can all see him. In that moment, the usher came down the aisle, and his sport coat, everyone thought, take care of this. Comes down, takes his sport coat off, and sits next to the young man for the rest of the service. Shakes his hand, welcomes him. Being with people in their struggle is our calling. Creating a safe place for people in their time of need is our calling. The speaker that day said, "The sermon I preached to you today, you'll forget. What you will remember is this: the actions of another helping another." Jesus calls us to be the good Samaritans, the ones who will stop by the side of the road, the ones who will help those who are struggling. If you physically can't do it, you can financially do it. As we look at our disability grant, as we look at being dementia-friendly, Westside is trying to take everything we can to make this place safe and welcoming for all. We invite you on this journey with us. These minor prophets are speaking to us as a country right now. What will we do in the face of these national issues? Obadiah says, don't just stand there and watch. Do something. Amen.